Hey, hey, hey. Time for another out of this world story from our space. I, 26 male, think my wife, 25 female, is or was cheating on me with her cousin. Alright, it's a long one, so bear with me. This situation happened about 2 weeks ago, and I've gone from fully trusting her to deeply doubting her. My wife and I met when I was 19, and we fell in love quite quickly. She had a 4-month-old child from a previous relationship. That father hasn't been in the picture since I've known her. Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a father. But I have a genetic disorder I don't wish to pass on, so adoption was just great with me. Anyhow, we've been just like normal family every day since then. We got married last year. She was never super close with her family, but she did have a pair of cousins she was always kind of close to, and I had lots of fun getting to know them, and they seemed like decent people. She did mention that one of them, Max, we'll call him, had when they were like 12 and 13, tried to kiss her, but she ran off. I asked her if she ever told anyone, and she said she chalked it up to him being a stupid kid. We see him on Christmas every year, and he seems like a normal dude. I actually liked him, as her family has a bunch of stuffed shirts, and he's down to earth. Recently, they've reconnected and gone to a few family functions. We own one car, and since I needed it for work, he picked her up and drove her to these things. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary about this. They are cousins after all. Her behavior really didn't make any obvious changes. However, randomly, as I was watching TV one night, she came in and mentioned that I had friended a girl from my place of work. I accepted her friend request. We're a pretty open couple, and things don't usually offend us. For instance, she'll remark on an attractive guy and make some sort of lewd remark, and I think nothing of telling her this woman was the new Office. She didn't accuse me of cheating, but it felt like she was about to, which has never happened before. The reason I mention this is because I've read cheaters accuse their partners as a projection or something. Anyway, these family outings were legit. The whole family posts pics on them on Facebook, and the wife sends pics from the outings. There were 2 of these events, and each time, wife came home and was like a robot. Sex seemed normal, if not quieter than usual, but as she suffers from depression, she often gets cold every so often, and when I asked her if she was doing alright, she chalked it up to that. Well, 2 weeks ago, she leaves for work, and as it was my day off, I puttered around the house, dropped the boy off at school, and came home to check my email. On Facebook, I saw that I had a message from her cousin. He and I had recently discussed going out to see a farm team baseball game, and I thought he was getting back to me. The message reads, "I'd like to see you on your knees." I was confused as hell, until I realized that my wife was still signed in, and it was her he was talking to. I wanted to kill him. I instantly rushed and read through their chat log, and it's filled with him creeping on her. And while she is saying things like, "But I'm married," and "No, I'm married," these read like very thin no's, like she is saying no because she has to, not because she wants to. I'm disgusted and absolutely floored about it. But since none of them mention anything happening yet, and she is denying him albeit kindly, I can't exactly say she's cheating. Well, when she gets home and our son is put to bed, I confront her over the situation. She instantly breaks down into hysterics and tears, saying things like, "I didn't do anything. I didn't know how to tell you. I was just hoping he stopped." Now, she and I both suffered childhood sexual abuse from family friends. We've both went to years of therapy for it, and for that reason, we have very good communication skills when it comes to comfort and boundaries, and how to express ourselves about unwanted advances. I love her, and I wanted to believe her, and that he was just being a creep, but the way she didn't tell me and acted seemingly normal leads me to believe something else was going on. I told her that I believed her, and asked her if I could message him to tell him to back off and how disgusted I am that they are cousins, or if she would prefer to tell him and handle it herself. She first expressed that she would tell him that I knew and not to call her, but her resolve cracked as she was confident this would just stop. I was furious about that, but didn't express it, and told her that knowing she was going to, I was going to give him a piece of my mind. This is my wife. If she's being harassed, I will end it, and if she's not being harassed, she's cheating on me, so I messaged him. He saw it, but made no reply. The wife says I should have let her handle the situation, and I told her there was no way I was going to keep quiet in the face of this. She seemed to understand and expressed in the end that I was probably right to confront him because she didn't know how. All seemed to return to normal, but 3 days later, I come home and she's crying. I ask her what's wrong, and she said, "It's Max. You should have let me handle it. I messaged him yesterday and he won't talk to me." We had the conversation again about me not sitting idly by when somebody is harassing my wife. She gave me a look. It wasn't much, and it was only for a second, but it gave me the impression that she didn't consider it harassment. We end the discussion in agreement that I handled it how any man would handle it. 2 days later, I'm coming to bed late, like 2 a.m., as I was finishing up some work. I hear her on the phone with somebody kind of chuckling. This is not normal. told me it was her mom and had something to do with our kid's birthday, which I didn't buy. But at this point, I've begun playing stupid so I can observe the situation from a place where she feels comfortable. The next day, she is crying again, and at this point, I've really had it. She's been unstable for 2 weeks now. When I ask her if this is about Max again, she says she tried to call and apologize for not handling the situation herself, and that he still isn't talking to her. I admit it, I snapped. I told her that either he was abusing her or she was cheating on me, and I caught them. On the couch tonight, obviously. I wanted to believe her, but I'm not a moron. I'm essentially laying here with my finger on the button, waiting for some solid truth, because if this is what it's feeling more and more like, I'm about to go 95,000 megaton nuclear on the both of them. Sorry for the length, I just don't know what I can do from here on out. Edit. Thanks for all the input. She goes to work in 6 hours. I will apologize for my outburst and ask her to sit down with me and talk tonight. It's Sunday, and our son typically stays the night with my parents every other Sunday. I'm not proud of it, but I feel it's in my best interest to do a snooping. If I find nothing, we will discuss what happened when it started, what I can do to help her, and what we ought to do moving forward. I love her, and the idea that she is being harassed by somebody who is supposed to love her breaks my heart. However, if I do find something sordid, or learn that she was complicit in any way, I am done with the relationship that instant. I don't believe in marriage counseling in instances of infidelity, and even if I did, incest. There's no way I could look at her the same again. Will update. Update 1. So I didn't sleep at all last night, and when she woke up, I made breakfast. I told her I shouldn't have blown up, and that we should probably sit down tonight and talk about things. She agreed like she wasn't even upset, to begin with, and she said she knew she had probably been acting badly. I told her that the sort of harassment she was dealing with was infinitely more difficult because he is a member of the family. She just seemed to agree with me. I wasn't going to snoop, but so many people on here told me I ought to, and not wanting to be accused of not taking the advice I asked for, I decided to go through with it and check her emails. With the way she was acting this morning, I had fewer reasons to be suspicious, but at this point, what the heck, and did just that. The level of disgust, hatred, and anger I feel cannot be expressed right, and there will be a divorce. There was one email entitled Yummy, and upon opening it, I found a picture of her cousin with semen on his face. The back and forths are him describing to her his encounters with random gay men. They make a reference to past sexual encounters they've had together, complete with one picture of a strap-on, a sex toy captioned, "I still have our old friend." Then I read some absolutely disgusting filth talk between them where she is behaving in a very dominating way and insulting his penis size. Looking at the dates, I realized that this was from a year ago. As I continue to read, I'm able to figure out, at least from how it reads, that they used to hook up frequently, but stopped after we got married. We were together for several years before we got married. Later, she starts using the "I'm married" excuse. But it's reading like that's just a kink of his, to be told he can't touch her anymore, which he probably does. I'm raising her freaking kid, and she does this to me? I've wasted the last 6 years changing my work schedule and not taking better paying jobs because I need hours where I'm able to watch him. I went outside and sat on the front porch, called my brother over, and after explaining to him the entire situation, asked him to take my gun from me for the time being. I'm not a violent person. I never have been. But in the state I'm in now, I'm fluctuating between wanting to do crazy stuff. I'm not going to. But I feel like I'm headed for a breakdown and I can't trust I'll behave rationally. After this, I'm packing up my clothes and checking into a hotel. These conversations have all been printed. I've sent copies to myself, and when I have time, I'm digging for more dirt. Bought a pack of cigarettes. Stopped smoking 4 years ago. And joy, I have to make an appointment at some STD clinic because according to these freaking vile back and forths, a part of this thing is having unprotected sex with these men. My soon-to-be ex-wife has a device, and as such, I've never once in all these years worn protection with her. So now I apparently have months of biting my freaking nails to look forward to, as I understand AIDS tests take months. I know his work schedule roughly enough, because I used to work for the same company he does. So maybe before checking in and composing myself, I'm just going to drive down to see his wife, evidence in hand. There's no fixing this. There's no therapy. No hope. Nothing positive, and I don't care to even entertain an apology. I'm divorcing the whore, and she will get nothing. I hate life right now. I don't feel depressed or sad. I haven't cried. I just have this hot ball of rage in my chest that the cigarettes only briefly cool. I can't be near her or him. I know I said I'm not violent, but man, I really want to beat the piss out of both of them. Update 2. Edit 1. Reposted from r/relationship advice, as some suggest that I post it here. Plus, I guess I needed a specific username for a throwaway account, and this is a throwaway account. Edit 2. My stepson is not a product of incest. He and his bio father look exactly alike, and he had to take a paternity test to establish child support. When it was established he was the father, he vanished and has only been heard from once in the last 4 years. The last couple of days have been a regular roller coaster for me. TLDR, recap version of my original post, I essentially discovered that my wife is and has been cheating on me with her own cousin Max for years. Actually, by the length of time this seems to have been going on, it might as well have been as her cheating on him with me. Okay, I went to a lawyer initially, and after I went straight to Max's home, where I spoke to his wife. She was brokenhearted, as one might expect, and disgusted over the incest. We sat down for a bit, and I told her also that he was bragging to my wife about how he was having unprotected sex with random internet men, and that there were pictures with him with semen on his face that he was sending my wife. She insisted on seeing them despite my advice not to, and she was broken. He was bisexual, and was always found to be chatting up random guys. She said she allowed him to go out every so often and see a man if he felt he had to get it out of his system, as she put it. She was under the impression that he hadn't done this in well over a year. When this was over, I stayed the night in a hotel where I still am, and talked with my mother, brother, and father. My mother-in-law called me begging me to come home and talk about this, that I must have made some mistake. It's all voicemail, I never picked it up. Wife tried calling me a dozen or so times. I didn't answer. She sent no texts. I assume she knows I've been documenting things and doesn't want to give me any more ammo. It's what I would do in her place. At the end of the day, I called her and kept it brief, saying I would talk to her the next day. When I eventually came home, she was a warbling mess. She tried to hug me, and I told her that's over. She insisted she never cheated on me, that I must have taken something the wrong way, and that Max's wife must be spreading these rumors because they hate each other. It is at this point that I realize that my wife thinks I heard about this from someone else. She doesn't know I discovered their affair myself. It's then that I show her the papers I have, the pics of him with semen on his face titled Yummy, the picture of a huge strap-on sex toy, titled Our Old Friend, her speaking to him as if she is some dominatrix type, saying how he has a small dick, and real power play type stuff. At points, she was telling him to send her pics of himself after these men were done with him. Real stomach-churning crap. I'm not a prude either. I engage in a lot of really kinky crap, so it's not like she's dealing with an uptight hubby who isn't open sexually and went out for those reasons. But anyway, as soon as she realizes that it was me who discovered this and told Max's wife, she goes from being weepy and sad to explosively angry, complete hysterics.
You should have talked to me first. She's all over everything, telling everyone. This is going to ruin me. You knew she would do this. I told him to stop texting me like that.
At that last statement, I absolutely exploded. I told her that I just got done reading a year's worth of texts and emails, and not once did she ever tell him to stop. I called her a freaking degenerate, said that we both probably have AIDS now, and she crumbled in on herself. She couldn't respond, just crying hard. Even still, I told her that we were getting divorced. I then called her father and told him to come to my house because she really shouldn't be alone in that state. I returned to my hotel room and saw that Max's wife had been texting me. She had done some intense digging on her own and found discussions about sexual encounters they had from 2010 on freaking MySpace. She told me early on in our relationship that he once tried to kiss her at 13. Well, they actually started screwing at 16 or 15, or during a time where MySpace was still widely being used. I'll admit it, this seeing it went on that far back was finally what broke me. I'm not big on emotional displays, but I broke down crying in front of his wife. She cried too. When that was over, I took her to the lawyer I'm seeing, and now one of his partners will be handling her divorce. Through all of this, Max has been panicking and crying, trying to find out where his wife is trying to talk to me. Still, after all this evidence, trying to ensure this is all some big misunderstanding. It turns out that Max and ex-wife live in a house owned by Max's parents, and they have come down hard against their son, telling him he cannot stay there anymore, and apologizing to their daughter-in-law and saying she's welcome to stay with their grandchild in that house for as long as she wants. He's basically disowned. Max's father even got it in his own head somehow that Max was molesting my wife as a child, and that is why she is doing what she is doing today. She is his favorite niece, basically a second daughter. So Max, in effect, is on the lam because his old man wants him dead. My father, unprompted and wanting to help me, assured me he'd pay for my hotel for the week. Today, I told my boss point blank, no filter, exactly what's happened, and that I am taking 2 weeks to sort my life out. He remarked about how crappy his divorce was and told me to take whatever time I needed bottle fed, and that he'll just tell everyone on the floor I've got a sick parent or something, which was sweet of him. Lying down in my hotel room, now missing a stepson I'll probably never see again. I raised him for 6 years, changed his diapers, bottle fed him at 3 a.m., took time out of work when he was sick, waited on him.
I gave her a home. I gave her my heart and my loyalty as we married. I accepted her crazy parents interfering with our lives. So when I gave her my soul, she was chasing belly tingles with someone else. Not just a somebody, no, no, no. It was a trusted family friend. They must think I'm a simp. They never expected me to be laser-focus driven by the need for revenge. Before we start, be sure to boil 6 eggs and sneak them with you to the like button's housewarming. Once there, plant these randomly in the like button's basket of fresh eggs. Warning. The following story will be upsetting to cheaters. So, here I am, a 27-year-old guy telling his twisted experience with my cheating wife. Let's introduce the star of the show, my wife, Kelly, who's 1 year my junior. She recently cheated on me with a friend of mine, also a 27-year-old. We'll call him Jay, for story's sake. Our story begins when I was 22. I attended a friend's wedding and happened to be seated next to Kelly. We were both close to the couple. She was tight with the bride, and I was chummy with the groom. Little did we know, our friends had hatched a plan to play matchmakers, seating us together at the wedding. When I first laid eyes on Kelly, I was utterly gobsmacked by her beauty. As we began to chat, it became apparent that we had a lot of things in common. Our conversation flowed easily, and we clicked instantly. We chatted away, enjoyed the wedding meal, and even swayed to the music on the dance floor. It was a night full of dancing, drinking, and, you guessed it, a little smooching right there in the middle of the dance floor. Our friends, the newlyweds, were ecstatic to see their matchmaking plan unfolding. They playfully asked us about our status, but we just shrugged it off and continued with our night. When we parted ways, we didn't exchange numbers. However, a week later, I received a text from Kelly asking me out. Our bride friend had shared my number. Without hesitation, I agreed, and thus, our relationship blossomed. Fast forward a couple of years, and our relationship was thriving, aside from the occasional tiffs that any couple experiences. Nothing really serious ever emerged, so eventually, I popped the question. Less than a year later, we were hitched. We enjoyed a little more than a year of wedded bliss before my world came crashing down around me. Just before our first anniversary, I noticed a shift in Kelly's behavior. She became more protective of her phone, her girls' nights seemed to multiply like rabbits, and our sexy time life dwindled to virtually non-existent. I brought up these concerns multiple times, only to be dismissed and accused of letting my insecurities get to me. Kelly appeared unaffected by my feelings and concerns, so in response, I grew colder. The tender goodbye kiss as I left for work vanished, and our conversations dwindled to only the necessary ones. Then came the night it got to me and I decided to see for myself. While Kelly slept, I scoured her phone and laptop, rummaging through her texts, emails, and messenger apps, only to find nothing suspicious. However, having read countless stories on here, I knew I had one more place to check, her car. I sneaked inside her car and to my surprise, I found a second phone. I knew in that instant what was going on. Yet, I wanted to gather all the evidence for when I confront her. I didn't want her to brush it off saying it had only happened once or any nonsense like that. I sifted through the phone, finding only one suspicious number. I read every message, connected the phone to my computer, and printed out every conversation and photo. That night, I found myself researching divorce lawyers. In my home office, I spent hours reading lawyer profiles until I found one I liked. I sent him an email, but since it was a Saturday, I didn't expect a response. My curiosity piqued. I wanted to know who the guy was. So, I picked up my phone, dialed the number I had found, and intended to pretend I was Spectrum. But as I dialed, Jay's contact popped up. I felt my world crash. I blew up, yelling and cursing in my office. My wife opened the door to check on me. The moment I saw her, I angrily yelled for her to get out. I had never raised my voice or cursed at her before. That day, I stayed holed up in my office, silently fuming and glaring at the wall. In need of a drink, I called up a friend from the wedding and asked if he would join me. He agreed, probably because he could hear something was wrong in my voice. Without any explanation, I grabbed all the printouts and headed to the bar. I got there first and ordered 4 shots of Jack and a beer. When my friend, let's call him Tony, arrived, he found me downing my last shot. When he asked what was going on, I blurted out, "Kelly's cheating." He was the one who had introduced me to Jay, and all he could say was, "I'm sorry," over and over again. Although Jay and I were never close, we were friendly whenever we ran into each other at social events. I made Tony promise not to tell anyone about this. I hadn't even spoken to Kelly or a lawyer yet. If his wife asked about me, he was to say I was having problems at work. He agreed. We drank and talked for most of the night. At around 3 a.m., I called an Uber and went home. When I got home, I saw Kelly sleeping on the couch. Without saying a word, I went up to our bedroom and fell asleep. When I woke up, she was lying next to me. Not wanting to confront her yet, I got dressed and left the house. I headed to my office and buried myself in work all day. When I got back home around 10 p.m., my wife was there to greet me. She had made me dinner and asked if I wanted her to heat it up. I simply said no and went to bed. She followed me, asking what had been bothering me. I told her to leave me alone and that I wanted to sleep. She wouldn't let me sleep and kept asking and trying to get my attention. Eventually, I lost my temper and yelled at her to stop and let me sleep. The next morning, I received an email from the lawyer asking to meet later in the day. I confirmed the meeting and got ready to leave. When I walked down, I saw Kelly had made breakfast and wanted to talk. I made a small plate and sat down. She began by saying that I'd been acting differently and going on about how I'd changed. She wanted to know why. I told her work had been stressful and assured her it would be over soon. After finishing my meal, I told her I had to leave for work. I was counting down the minutes until I could meet the lawyer. The meeting with the lawyer went well. I handed over all the evidence I had gathered. The lawyer told me, "Well, I'm sorry for all that's going on, but I'm happy you gathered all this information. You see, we live in an at-fault state, so your wife has no claim on most of your money." I was taken aback. I hadn't even thought about that. I just wanted to get a divorce as soon as possible. I asked the lawyer to make copies of the evidence and he agreed. When I got home, I was ready to confront Kelly, but she wasn't there. I called her once, twice, but there was no answer. So, I texted her, "I don't care if you're with Jay right now. Get home, we need to talk." Sure enough, she called back in less than a minute, asking what I was talking about. All I told her was to get home now. She showed up 15 minutes later. "Interesting," I said. 15 minutes is just about how long it takes to drive from here to Jay's. What a coincidence. She stared at me, looking confused. I gave her a minute to assemble her thoughts, but she was clearly too busy practicing her goldfish impression to reply. Lost for words? I asked. She tried to deny everything and starts gaslighting me. As she started to insult me personally, I slammed my fist on the table to put an end to it. "Check out this mountain I've built up," I said, pulling out my stack of evidence. I showed her each printout, one at a time. She told me to stop and began to cry. She even tried to apologize and said she loved me. "Funny," I said, "you were so adamant on degrading and insulting me 1 minute ago. Where's that fiery spirit now?" She tried to hug me, blubbering about how sorry she was. I held up my hand, signaling her to keep her distance. She kept pushing herself towards me, insisting she could make it right and she would do anything for me, asking to go to the bedroom. "You suggest we take this to the bedroom? I'm never gonna touch you again. Also, do you know who else has these documents? My lawyer. I'm divorcing you. Now grab a bag, pack up your things, get the frick out of my house." That was 3 days ago, and since then, there's been radio silence from her. I apologize for the length of this story. I'm curious, for those who've been in my shoes, what should I brace myself for next? Thanks for being here with me. Bravo! You've tackled that situation like a true champ. Now let's go over the post-game plan. First and foremost, it's time to go on a financial spring cleaning spree. Take her off all your accounts, insurance, credit cards, the works. Change every single one of your passwords. Next, book yourself an STD test. It's never a fun afternoon, but hey, better safe than unknowingly harboring a rogue parasite. And please, for the love of all that's holy, don't act out in anger. As much as you might want to give her or Jay a piece of your mind or fist, don't. Follow your lawyer's advice religiously. Ask him if you can change the locks on the house. She's effectively abandoned ship, so it's only right you secure the fort. Steer clear of booze. It might seem like an easy escape, but trust me, they're about as helpful as a chocolate teapot. Brace yourself for the storm that's coming. It'll be a whirlwind of begging, gaslighting, and blame shifting. She might even try to play the victim card and paint you as the villain in her twisted narrative. Don't let her. Broadcast your side of the story. Share it with your parents, friends, and especially if Jay has a girlfriend or wife, Share it with her. Channel all that pent-up anger and rage into exercise. It's a great way to blow off some steam, keep you grounded, and tire you out for a good night's sleep, which might seem like a distant memory as the reality of the situation sinks in. Good luck, soldier, and keep us in the loop. We're rooting for you. Much appreciated for the advice. I'll stick to that. Lawyer told me all communication between her and I should go through him, so hopefully I won't be talking to her at all. Jay does have a fiancé and I'm planning on telling her. How do you plan on contacting Jay's fiancé? I'm sure he knows that you know, and will likely be on the lookout for anything in the mail or you showing up at the house, etc. Hopefully he doesn't have access to monitor her email or socials. I've met her a few times and I have her personal number. I will try to contact her until she answers, and if she doesn't, I'll go to their house when he's at work. I'll put a note in her car to contact me. I won't let that jerk get away scot-free. You, my friend, are a savage and I love it. It's bad enough for someone to cheat, but it's so much worse when they cheat with someone you actually know. I think trying to talk to the fiancé is a great idea. Nobody deserves to be treated like this, and I hope you can heal and find someone who is truly right for you. Sending hugs your way. Thank you. I know it'll suck for a while, but I'll work through it. Good on you, man. Swift and decisive action. So sorry that you got caught up with another fake friend out here, but you will come out on top in the end. They always can explain, expect the begging and crying to continue when she gets the divorce papers. It didn't mean anything. I don't love him and other bullcrap. Expose her to all near and far after. The thing is, if she was blowing up my phone I could ignore it, but the silence is making me uneasy. Like, what scheme is this woman up to? She ain't scheming, she's afraid of what is to come. Smoke them out to everyone and get her served. Let the fiancé of the other lowlife know too. Her actions before all of this just showed that she never really gave a crap about you, especially with the dead bedroom, but I guess we know why now. Can't trust no one these days, bro. So, my lawyer advised against publicly shaming her or him as it could hurt my case, but I will have her served at work as I have no idea where she is staying now. I will tell his fiancé everything and give copies of all the evidence. Hello everyone. First off, a big thank you to all of you who took the time to comment or send me messages. Your advice and praise mean a lot to me. My apologies if I haven't managed to answer all your comments. I've been trying to keep up. After the initial post, I found myself flooded with tons of advice. Being the sensible man I try to be, I decided to follow most of it. This morning was all about damage control. First on the list, booking an appointment with the doctor for an STD check. That's now lined up for 2 days from now. Next, I reached out to my support network, my father and a few close friends. They've all been very supportive, offering their own advice and even help. But, as I've got this disaster on a fairly tight leash, I politely declined their help. Then came the time to face her family. I sent a text to her mom and dad expressing my gratitude for welcoming me into their family and for all they had done for me. But, with a heavy heart, not really, they were kind of suffocating, and although they're nice people, I'm relieved I no longer have to deal with them. I informed them that Kelly and I were getting divorced. 6 years married for show. One aggressive wife. 0 loyalty. Mix in a scarcity mindset. I present to you the recipe of my life. 6 solid years of being together, devoted to a sacred pact of marriage. Us against the world. Until a shadow emerged, the cruel reality of her cheating. What we built was suddenly gone, smashed by her unfaithfulness. It was all fake, all the love, the trust, the dreams we shared over the years shattered. Our promise to stand by each other till death do us part seemed like a bad joke now. It hurt, but I had no choice. You'll understand. I had to do what I did. When the like button lets you borrow its favorite book, don't use a bookmark. Instead, simply fold the corner of the page to leave a crease. Warning. The following story will be upsetting to cheaters. This is a long story, but I'll try my best to make this short. We'll have to make multiple parts, though, to get the full picture through. My soon-to-be ex-wife, who we will call Lola, and I got married in January 2020. I was 22 at the time and Lola was 21. We got married in secret, only our close friends knew. At this time, we were living on campus at our university in Miami, both coming from 2 counties away where our families lived as well. As soon as we got married, it was a toxic nightmare. For starters, she was secretly texting her ex-boyfriend from high school, who we will call Carlos. She stated they were just friends now, but this didn't sit right with me, as this person was also her first one. I'm not the type of person to go into someone's phone, as I wanted to trust her. However, she started trying her hardest to hide her phone screen from my point of view, and whenever I touched her phone, she would go crazy. At some point, I was able to figure out her passcode and check her messages. However, I wasn't able to find any proof to follow up on this. Fast forward to March 2020, the pandemic hits and everyone is forced to move back home. We were in a weird position, as we still haven't told our families, so we wore our rings in secret. Everything was seemingly okay until the first week of April 2020, she just randomly stated she wanted a divorce. It shattered my heart to hear that, as I cried and begged her to stay. I tried asking where did I go wrong or if I wasn't doing enough for her. She just stated she just didn't love me anymore, and that she wasn't the one for me. For about a week I was trying my best to save our marriage. I was at her mercy to try to make things work out, but she's extremely stubborn. At the end of that rough week, I decided to finally accept that she doesn't want to be with me anymore. It was hard to accept, but I figured we shouldn't drag this along anymore. I only asked for her to return the wedding rings I gave her. However, she refused to give them back, as she stated. It was a gift for her and she was entitled to keep them. Legally speaking, she may have been right. However, I didn't feel like she deserved to keep them, as we were no longer going to be together. The rings were real. I was on a payment plan for them for about 3 years, with only 4 months in so far. We argued about this over the phone, to the point I hung up and cried myself to sleep in bed. Later I spoke to my mother, and she asked what was going on. I confessed everything to her, and she held me in her arms and told me everything was going to be okay. The next day, we both went to Lola's home, to where we confronted her mother and told her the truth as well. It became an argument between our mothers, with Lola still upstairs refusing to see me, but was texting me asking what the hell was going through my mind to get our families involved. It was then agreed by our mothers that the rings would be given back to me, but on another day. About 2 days later, I get a call while at work from Lola. She was crying, stating that her mother was kicking her out because she got married in secret. She stated she still loved me and was willing to give us another try, agreeing to cut off Carlos, and that we should move in together and live as a married couple. Being the idiot in love, I rushed out of work to meet up with her. And then we immediately started looking into apartments in the area. I was able to get us an apartment that was fairly cheap due to the pandemic, and the move-in date was within 3 days. When I got home, I told my parents the news, and my mother was not happy about this. She explained that I was making a mistake, that I needed to rethink all this. My father was disappointed, but stated it's my life, my choice. For the next few days, my friends helped me move things from my place, and I barely talked to my parents within those days. It was heartbreaking for my mother the most, and it hurt me seeing my mother upset as well. The first day in, I felt like our marriage was finally moving in the right direction, and I was finally feeling that happiness I was feeling before she told me she wanted to divorce me. However, that happiness did not last long. A few weeks after moving in, we get invited out for some drinks, and when we got back home, I went through her phone to find conversations between her and a different ex, who we will call Tanner. The messages went back as far as around the time she asked for a divorce, and this made my legs crumble. She was passed out on the bed, however. I woke her up by splashing water on her and started screaming at her. She was confused as she was still tipsy, but I was furious and yelled at her for over 2-3 hours. At one point, I demanded her to leave, as she was starting to come back to her senses. She began swinging at me and chasing me around the apartment, actually punching me a few times and viciously clawing at me. I'm not a violent person at all. I took the abuse and just locked myself in the room to keep her away from me. She turned from aggression to hysterically crying and begging me to forgive her, to the point she was on her knees and stated she would do anything to make up for it. We just began arguing and then slowly into talking about this situation through the bedroom door. Eventually, we both calmed down and went to bed as it was 4 a.m. when this was happening. I didn't sleep, however, and when 7 a.m. came around, she woke up with only half the memory from what happened overnight. I repeated yelling everything back to her again, but this time she was sober enough to know what was going on and again pleaded for me to stay. She cried, stating she had nowhere else to go. In that moment, I hated her so much as I feel she stole me away from my family, my friends, and my life. About what I saw in the messages, there was nothing that stated they've done anything physical, at least from what was texted. However, there were conversations that had sexual tensions, such as her calling Tanner sexy and Tanner stating they should send each other videos, which I still consider cheating. After further arguing, I told her as long as she promises nothing happened between her and Tanner, I better not see her talking to Tanner ever again, or I will leave her this time. She pleaded that nothing ever happened, but during the same conversation I asked if anything had happened between her and Carlos. She paused and said, "No." It was this moment I knew I had to investigate this further. My gut told me this was only the beginning of what was to come next, and my world would be turned upside down. I'll explain more on this later. Following my previous post, we are now in May 2020. When I asked if anything happened between her and Carlos, Lola reluctantly responded, "No." The way she answered made me suspicious. To add on a little bit more, when we first moved in April 2020, I was working at a call center about an hour away from our apartment from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. She was not working due to her job being closed, so I had to start doing Uber Eats, Postmates, and DoorDash, which would usually be between 8 p.m. and 2 a.m. after work or whenever on my days off from work. Also, after the first night we moved in, I was given the cold shoulder from her every night. While I'm working, she would text me cute things, such as her repeatedly saying she loves me and waiting for me to come home to cuddle. However, once I got home, she would barely touch me or look at me, which led to my discovery about her and Tanner. Anyways, now we're in June 2020, weeks after the incident. At this point, I'm keeping my distance from her, keeping my same work routine, while also trying to finish college classes online. She was not working yet, but whenever I came home, it was never cleaned up, unless I did it. Around this time, she also adopted a mini golden doodle, but when we moved in, I brought my Malshi along with us, who she loved dearly until our doodle came around, also giving him the cold shoulder. Malshis are the friendly, loyal, and cuddly cross of the Maltese and the Shih Tzu. For the next few months, it's been nothing but the same routine. We tried to talk and go out on dates, but it always ended in silence. I tried to break the ice and see if we can work it out, but she never wanted to express herself. Little by little, I felt my love for her going away as I became numb to her treatment towards me. That was until October 2020 when she finally opened up to me. She apologized for her treatment towards me the past few months. We felt like we were both ready to leave the past behind and just focus on us now. It was us against the world. This felt more powerful when I caught COVID the following month, where she cared for me the way a wife should. She ended up catching it from me once I recovered, and I returned the favor. After that, we started acting more like husband and wife. She finally started getting into my hobbies such as video games, anime, art, and photography, even coming along with me during my late-night deliveries, where we would vibe out to music and she would help as well. We discovered new things about each other, went on dates, and honestly, it felt heartwarming being in her presence again. That spark between us was finally coming back, but I still had a secret grudge against her actions, as it was hard to move on from it. All was going good until a few days before Valentine's Day 2021, where I made another discovery. These past months, I still secretly went through her phone every now and then, but honestly never found anything between her and Tanner besides what I already knew. However, I decided this time to take it a step further and look at messages between her and her bestie, who Lola would constantly send all the gossip to with long messages and screenshots. Going through the messages made my heart sank even more when I found more details about her and Carlos. Turns out that Lola and Carlos slept together a few days before she asked me for a divorce, and this was actually the real reason for her asking me for the divorce. As I kept reading, turns out Lola and Carlos had a conversation sometime in October, I guess, for some closure between them, which is why she finally decided to give us a shot. Oddly enough, I was not surprised this time. I woke her up from her nap and just straight up confronted her about what I just read in a surprisingly calm tone. She started crying and apologizing again, and then I just stepped out and went for a drive to clear my mind. Many dark thoughts were going through my head, feeling like I had no one to turn to. For the next few days, I avoided her as much as possible. We still slept in the same bed, but there was no physical touch between us. Now, Valentine's Day morning, I get a couple of nudges from her in a cutesy tone asking what did I plan for her today. Keep in mind, I'm extremely exhausted from work and my deliveries from the whole week, and obviously I'm still heartbroken and feeling betrayed. She notices my reaction and starts crying, saying that I didn't plan anything out for her. Once I heard that, I jumped out of bed and began scolding her about how crazy as hell she has to be to think I would do anything for her, after what I just discovered. I yelled at her how she does not deserve anything from me and how our marriage is a total disaster. Now you may be wondering, why am I even still here with her? Well, at this point in my life, I honestly did not have the energy for anything. I was completely blank, a complete 180 from the person I used to be. I used to be creative, make drawings and paintings, do photography and videography, and always looked forward to the next adventure. But I was hollow, feeling like, what's the point of life? I know I'm stupid for this, but I just felt like it was just easier to hide it from the world. We were already so deep into the marriage life that it felt like there was no going back, because if I did, then what would I do now? It was a dead end for me, and I blame myself for relying on her to make me happy despite also making me the saddest. Doesn't mean I forgave her or anything, I just became more numb. So after this discovery, we again entered another period of keeping our distance. Around April 2021, she took a trip to Peru with her grandmother, and honestly, I was a little excited to have the place to myself for a change. I told my friends the news and they began showing up to my place frequently while she was away, not knowing what I know. They made me feel like my old self again, doing our old late-night shenanigans and old activities like game nights, watching movies, or just hanging out. I loved the happiness I was getting back, even if it was for a moment. At the same time, the lease on our apartment was up by the end of May 2021, and I've been speaking to my father about